Well, here in Paris, another fashion week has just wrapped up, a chance for designers to show off their collections for the coming year. But if you are a woman who's ever been lucky enough to go shopping in Paris and you're not exactly model thin, you might have found it difficult to quite simply find something that fits. Here in Paris, it's often impossible to find women's clothes that are bigger than a size 42 or 44, which is about a 12 or a 14 in US sizes. Well, one woman living here in the French capital at the time decided to channel her frustration over feeling like a fashion outsider into a book, writing the novel Plus Size in Paris. Her name is Erin Zhurkin, and she joins me now live from her new hometown of Seoul. Erin, welcome to the show. First of all, tell us a bit more about the aha moment when you decided to write Plus Size in Paris.
Oh, well, thank you, Janie, so much for having me tonight. I'm so thrilled to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity. I there's a favorite quote that I have from Carrie Fisher that, she said, take your broken heart and make it art. And that's essentially what I did. When I arrived in Paris, I was kind of caught off guard with the fact that I wasn't going to be able to have fun with fashion and walk down those iconic streets feeling empowered and confident in clothes that I had bought there because I couldn't find any. And so that was quite disappointing and a little heartbreaking because I do love fashion. I love being a part of that world and learning about it and just watching it like we all do. So I just decided that there was a story there
So
to tell.
what? So
A part of
what?
Paris, yeah. Go ahead.
So what are some of the experiences that your main character Abby in the book lives out that happened to you in real life?
Well, one that comes to mind straight away is when we were moving into our new apartment, one of the Austin buildings there in the 17th. There's those tiny little lifts, elevators that you need to use. And I got in with a neighbor and another neighbor, and the elevator gave this harrowing sound that it wouldn't move. And I was the one that was looked at, and I was the one that was kind of gently nudged to please leave the elevator, as if it was my fault that the elevator wasn't moving up. So yeah, that was and that's in the book. I put that scene in the book as well. So to
That's
have that kind of authentic flair
Ah,
to it.
wow. I mean, what's also interesting about the book, I mean, we often criticize social media, we criticize influencers, but you were saying
Yeah.
what we learn in your book, in this space, being plus size is actually, a plus size influencer is actually really helpful. And in fact, you even dedicated your book to them.
Yes, I did. I really felt like that they gave me a voice through their profiles and what they were doing online. I felt like that I was seen actually in their profiles. And so they were a huge help to me when I was in Paris, actually, to find different ways to enjoy myself, in my own clothes and try to work around what the options I had there.
All right,
So I'm
so
definitely grateful to them.
well, let's talk a bit more
Yeah.
about the options. I mean, we've just wrapped up another fashion week
Yeah.
here in Paris. Are there any fashion houses today that are more inclusive of different size bodies? I mean, it seems like there was a trend a while back toward that, seeing more inclusive, different types of bodies on runways, but not so much this
Right.
year.
Right. I mean, I think that Christian Siriano is one of the top in that. I mean, he is so genuine and so earnest in his commitment to making sure that all body types are on his runways, every single show. I truly love him. I think he really has his heart in that, and he's really committed to that. And that's really making a difference. And it's making me feel seen, obviously. And any other woman that's watching his shows are like, oh, I could be up there too. And
Hmm.
I think that's what the fashion weeks should feel like for anyone that's watching it. I think we should all feel like, well, I could get up there. I mean, of course, we're not trained models and things like that, but there should be a feeling of that it's not something that I couldn't do. That makes
Right.
sense.
But I guess
So, yeah.
why do you think, I mean, so few fashion houses are trying to be more inclusive? I mean, what's that all about? Is it not cool? Is it not profitable? I mean, what's the real reason?
Well, when I was researching quite a bit from my book, because one of the settings in the book is a fictional fashion house called Claudette, and I was researching about the scene and the setting, and so that was more authentic when I was writing. And it really comes down to from what I understand, it's manufacturing. It's the lines are longer; they're not as quite fast to process. If you have a larger size, you have more fabric to deal with and sewing to do. So it does come down to some profit, apparently.
Yeah.
profit margins,
Like
unfortunately.
so
So
many things, unfortunately. Let's talk a bit.
unfortunately, yeah.
Let's talk a bit more about actually what it took to get your book published. I mean, you had this idea, you decided to write this book, you were shopping it around
Yeah.
about the same time that Emily in Paris was out, which is not very plus size at all. I mean, was it difficult to
Right.
get the book actually published?
It was. I mean, I actually was starting to query when COVID hit with the finished manuscript, and I had a lot of interest. I had a lot of interest. I had a lot of requests from literary agents for the full manuscript to read it and things. And I actually did acquire, I was acquired by a literary agent. I worked with her for a year. And it really came down to, by that time, Emily in Paris had kind of been released. And so it was hard because I actually received a response from an agent that said, "Oh, I really enjoyed reading Emily in Paris." So I actually responded and said, "Well, you didn't read Emily in Paris. You read Plus Size in Paris." So it was a little different story, a little different, avenue there. But so I think it just got wrapped up in that whole um, storyline because it was set in Paris. But it's a very different story to Emily's, and it is. I would say it's a more real story. It's rooted in realness. I'll put it that way about what Paris is like to live in it, in a different body type and just in general, it's a little more real.
And
Yeah.
staying with the themes of what's real, you've actually also started a podcast called Plus Sized Hearts. I mean, what kind of things do you talk
Yes.
about? What kind of things have you learned doing that?
Well, I wanted to kind of have fun with the term plus size and turn that kind of on its head a little bit, meaning that let's talk about who we are as people. Let's talk about our heart size. Like, let's make sure that we're approaching the world and being someone who has a plus size heart, not just about body size with the term, if that makes sense. So, and I learned so much. I actually interviewed so many different people. A woman that started running the website Curvy Fashionista, 15, 20 years ago now. I mean, she's been doing this work, really trying to make sure that women of all sizes are represented. They have fashion options. I interviewed a woman that's from the Ivory Coast that told me actually my body type, my body size would be considered a snack. I didn't know that. I didn't know there were parts in the world that I'd be considered a snack. That was awesome, to fight to understand that. So lots of fun, different things like that really were wonderful to hear and understand and learn more about from
So,
different women.
so Erin, you were
Yeah.
living in Paris when you wrote the book. It's called Plus Size in Paris. You moved to South Korea for family reasons. I mean, what's it like in South
Yeah.
Korea being plus size? Are things better or worse?
I would say that it's a question of better or worse. I mean, I would say that probably it's just as daunting, yes, to be a larger bodied woman here. That's for sure. I did have some women, Korean women, come to my book launch last year when I did it. And I had hands raised and saying, "Are you going to do a book about Korea? About, this subject needs to be covered here too. It's really important." So yeah, I think it needs some work as well for women here. Yeah. Definitely.
Erin, thank you so much for talking to us. Just before you go, one quick tip for someone who might be plus sized in Paris and doesn't quite know what to do. I mean, what advice would you give?
Well, I think you need to search out those boutiques. I do know there are boutiques now, I would say a handful, not a lot, but a handful that are, helping to offer these options for women that are larger bodied and that they can find what they want to feel confident and empowered walking down those gorgeous streets.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, Erin, thank you so
yeah.
much for sharing your experience with us and your example
Thank
and your
you.
book, Plus Size in Paris. That's soon coming out as an audiobook as well. So be sure to check that out. Erin Zhurkin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
You are watching France 24. French Connections is next.